Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Men and Sex. I'm your host, Mr. Wood. This podcast is all about normalizing taboo conversations. Here we talk about sex, we talk about masturbation, we talk about nudity, we talk about intimacy. Many of the things that men have been told not to talk about, not to discuss, and here we're doing it differently. I often have men on here and we talk about their story anonymously. I talk to men all over the world to share what it was like growing up where they grew up, the culture they grew up in, the language that they spoke, the people around them. And I've really been enjoying this series. Today, I have Stefan Fitzer, who is a brother from Sacred Sons. We were both in the Mankind Project together. We've had many conversations at events together, and he grew up in Germany, in the east side of Germany, and he was what he called behind the wall in communism until 11 years old. We're going to have some rich conversation, I'm sure, about growing up there and sexuality. Welcome to the show, my brother.
Yeah, Ian, good to see you. Good to have this chat with you.
Yeah. So let's tell the listeners, and I'm sure enlighten me a little bit more about where you grew up and some of the culture. And I mean, 11 is some very important years when it comes to relationship to arousal, to sexuality, and starting to just have those things activated in you. So, what was it like growing up around communism in Germany, when these things were forming for you?
Yeah, good topic in general. And what I would say is I'd have to like tell the story of German culture and how it came to be before I even was born. And there's a thing in Germany called FKK or FKK, which means freie Körperkultur. It was a culture where people were naked in public spaces with each other. And that was actually normalized in the late 19, early 20th century. There was people that basically said, we want to be free. We want to be one with nature. We want to be outside. We want to feel the sun. We don't want to
Wow.
have clothes on. It was like a movement. And it's been fun for me to research this. I
Wow.
grew up around that. I would go to the beaches naked with my family. That was how we grew up. That was very normal. But researching that, I'm fascinated actually, and it's been sweet for me to get to know my own culture more. But yeah, I came out of this culture of, Germans working in factories, getting
Yes.
sick. There was a lot of like nasty stuff going around, tuberculosis, and so there was some people that were like, let's get back to nature, let's get out there, let's take our clothes off, let's be done with all this like stiff colors. There was
Mm.
a lot of discipline in Germany. Um, so they made away with that, and there was this whole, it's almost like a hippie movement that started in the 19 late 1900s. Um, how cool. My fucking culture started the hippie movement. Um, but without LSD, without all the tie-dye, it was like it was interesting. They would form these clubs where they would basically go and hike around and sing these songs. That's what it was called.
Whoa.
Wandervogel, apparently. But anyhow, all that to say, I grew up with it was very normal for us to be naked around each other in the family. It was very normal for us to. I grew up close to the Baltic Sea, so north of Berlin. It was in the Eastern Bloc. The wall fell in '89, so I was born '78. I was there for 11 years, and yeah, it was normal for us to be naked around each other, around our grandma, around our, siblings, cousins, like everything. So, but also on the public beaches, of course. So, I would say my first signs of arousal were actually in those spaces. I would say. Yeah, actually, not necessarily on the beaches. It was probably like seeing my cousins, female cousins, and seeing their breasts and, I think that was probably where I first was like, huh, I'm feeling something.
Yeah, yeah. What is
Um,
this?
yeah. Yeah. The other thing that's really interesting to me, and it maybe is part of this overall cultural imprint that I have, is that I did not masturbate. I did not watch porn. Well, first of all, there wasn't any porn in East Germany.
Yeah,
Of course, I was 11 too, although that is more normal here.
yeah, yeah.
My kids now here as teenagers, they were exposed to that way earlier. But yeah, no porn, no masturbation for me. Now this after the wall, I started having girlfriends around 13, 14. Probably had sex for the first time at 14, 15. So pretty early on. And I would say I was an early bloomer. My parents always tell me that. But there was never a time where I was like feeling something and needing to take care of it. It was actually the other way. I remember the first time a girl approached me and just kind of grabbed my ass and pulled me to, we were like out dancing, pulled me to, yeah. And it was like no alcohol dancing. Like it was
Yes.
for young people. We'd go and dance, go to the
Wow.
disco. And she'd pull me to the bar and just give me a French kiss. And I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. But I had like no previous desire even.
Yeah.
I think it was
Man,
just totally, totally surprising.
I I have so much compersion for you. I have so much joy for that joy. And it's a version of learning about sex that I wish more men got. That they got to
Yeah.
explore through the innocence, through the interacting with another, and no preconceived conditioning around what it might look like, what it should be, that so many young boys get from porn. No masturbation, no porn, no shaming, like, and to go, I mean, oh my God, the world, how different
Hmm.
it would be if more men got to learn about sexuality in that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say, I have my own challenges with the
Yeah.
German culture and all other, there's plenty other things, but that is one area where I'm really grateful, and glad. And it's true. I mean, just to talk a little bit more about also East Germany. So apparently this nudist culture started before East Germany was founded, even before the wars. And then once after the Second World War, East Germany got established, they actually shunned it. They did not want it. They saw it as kind of a bourgeois, like high society pastime, and they didn't want that. It was all about like we're all equal. But the people of East Germany did not let go of it. They were like, we want to be nude. This feels good to us. They did it in between their, on their breaks from the factory shifts and
Whoa.
stuff. And even the political party leaders would do it. And so at some
Whoa.
point they decided we're gonna shift our brand and like now we're all for it and it's something that we can all do. Um, and say it's not just for the rich. It's not just for the, higher ups. So it actually kind of exploded in East Germany for that reason. And one of the things that I wanted to bring to this conversation is the relationship between cultural openness to nudity and to normalizing we all have bodies. They're all okay, like no matter what size. And that's what I'm taking from that, from my childhood too. I'm I'm trying to think if I have had, I mean, yeah, I have body issues on some level, for sure. But compared to others, I think Germans, I can generalize that, have less body issues, less concerns about how they look because of this normalizing that
Mm.
happened in that culture. And me just seeing all the different bodies on the beach. And so that was supported by the East German government. And that still bled over after the unification. I mean, I still go there and I've taken my, girlfriends and my wife over to Germany now, and they're still like, what? We're all naked on the beach together with your mom? Like, are you kidding me? Um,
Yeah.
but I also have to say it's a non-sexual
Yeah.
situation. And,
Yeah.
I've been with partners in the past that I've taken over there, and they were like, "Oh my God, you look hot," walking into the water or something. And I was like, "Girl, this is not the place. Like, this is actually, culturally speaking, a non-sexual space that we're in,
Ooh.
and a culture that we create, or that is the feeling I get there.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that now with the Western culture, with cell phones, with all that is changing
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Now there will be people coming to those beaches or those spaces. It's at lakes too and different places where they have their phones out and they're like, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
look at this. Everybody's naked."
Yeah.
And but yeah, I grew up going with my best friend to a place on this island, and everybody naked, playing volleyball on the beach, going to the
Wow.
bakery naked. It was just like, it was cool,
Yeah.
but it was like different to, and kind of surprising to what you would, see in other cultures or what you might expect.
It's fascinating, this subject of non-sexual nudity, and it's something that I'm very passionate about the differentiation, and that, particularly here in the US and many places, this that se nudity has inherently been connected to sexuality in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
And what a disservice I believe that is, because I love that you pointed that out, that a partner or someone was like, "Oh, you look hot getting in the water." And you're like, "No,
Right.
that's not what this space is for. That's not what we're doing here." And I think that that's such a potency that can't even be articulated what's received from that separation of sexualization and nudity, because something happens when nudity is just automatically inherently sexual. There's something that is not okay about that. And it's for each of us, how I feel in my body when I have clothes on and when I don't have clothes on. And if I
Hmm.
think being naked is inherently sexual, then that's going to change how I feel when I'm naked. And it's just like a snowball effect, I feel. So I loved when you said that and you pointed that out, like, no, that's not what this space is.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I think it's so fascinating for me to think about how that has influenced also my sexual behavior, my sexual life, my sexual experience as a man. And, we were talking offline about this, and I think I can talk about my own experience at some of the men's weekends we've done together, or, in the different organizations where nudity was a part of it. And I really enjoyed that as well. The normalization of that, the non-sexual normalizing of that, to just see each other,
Yeah,
and to, like, it's such a huge thing to have that happen. And yeah, if not anything else, I hope to pass that on to my kids, to where, because I still get naked when we go over there, or when we go to the river and go, jump in somewhere. Like, I want that to be normal still. And I also try to respect
yeah,
their experience here in America as
yeah,
teenagers, and
yeah,
how, I don't expect from them that they get naked, or,
yeah,
anything like that. But I
yeah,
I do think that that's something that I can take forward as a man and as a father.
yeah.
So,
Give a model of something that a lot of people in the US don't get to experience, which is
sure.
which
Yeah.
is I see it as healthy conversation, at least, to like
Hmm.
bring, for so many young people, they never even get a conversation about nudity or sexuality, or any of these deeper things that deserve many conversations across many years, to continue to have these conversations in a healthy way that's grounded, that's present, that's not like forcing things, but sharing, from your unique experience and saying, no, this can be just this. you know,
Yeah,
like being out in the sun with your shorts or bathing suit on, but we just don't have those on. But it's the same thing. It's the same act. And now our whole body's getting the sun on it and we're feeling nature and we're present.
totally.
It, it,
Totally.
it
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, totally. And I have a lot of those conversations with my wife now, who grew up in Louisiana and in church, in Catholic church, and so we
Wow.
have very different experiences of that time. But I point out to her, when she was 15, 16, she also had those feelings. And the thing is, with our kids, we got four, and the oldest is 17. He's had a girlfriend for a couple of years. Like, they're gonna have those feelings, and those urges are powerful. Now, for us to create a safe space for them is the best we can do, and I would say that's something I remember too about my upbringing, is that my parents at least were not objected, or didn't
Yeah.
tell me to not see my girlfriends. And it was, I'm gonna say probably, I mean, this is something my mom still tells me. She's like, yeah, one of my first girlfriends must have been 14 or so. In the morning, they were eating breakfast, and we just walked naked to the bathroom past them. They're like, what's going on? And apparently I said something like, come on, mom, we're being careful. It's all good. Something like that.
Yeah.
Um, so just for that to be normalized too, and I like that in our family now, we have that openness to include the girlfriends in our family, to have that be okay, to create that space for them where they can be together. And yeah, we buy them condoms, and we tell them about how important it is to the okay touch, the respect of your girlfriend and the women, and all of that is definitely something we talk about. Um, but to practice that, and to remember that time in my life where that was just common for me and my family, I like that. I like thinking back to that.
One thing that seems so important for me to point out in these times is that it's really apparent the other way isn't working, meaning condemning, shaming, don't
Yeah.
do this, like all the things around what you shouldn't do, how you shouldn't do it, like all that, it's very clearly not working.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
that in my experience of talking to men and hearing men is definitely predominantly what happens is just hearing what we shouldn't do without clarity and conversations of like, you know, beyond abstinence and anatomy,
Hmm.
beyond just those two conversations. It's like there's such a depth here that there's an opportunity to communicate about. And I love your story because you got to explore that connection with another person in the word that comes to mind for me is innocent way, meaning
Hmm.
you were exploring with this person what you two were naturally feeling. It wasn't
Hmm.
coming from a mind projection filled with porn and like
Yeah.
all these other things. It was like literally you as two beings feeling things in your interaction together and exploring what it was that you felt called to explore. That is like the richness that I see everywhere in life.
Yeah, no, I'll tell you a little more about that, because it wasn't just one girlfriend. It wasn't like, this romantic thing, like the whole way through my teenage years. Um, but yeah, I also wanted to speak about, I wonder if how important this is, but it's important for me to say my first like ejaculations actually happened having wet dreams. And that was quite a common thing for me, probably from when I was like 10 or 11. And there was a little bit of shame for me to wake up in the morning and be like, or wake up with it being wet, and then having to change sheets and stuff. But it was just, it was curious for me to remember that in some ways, because that means that my body was feeling urges, and I was feeling those energies, even though I didn't know or wasn't masturbating, you know.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to just have that perspective. And yeah, I didn't watch porn or masturbate until I was in my 20s, actually, when I was living on Hawaii for 10 years, and I
Wow.
was without a woman for, few years. And it was kind of it was a time of finding myself, and also like there was something about self-pleasure and all of that that was important for me. There was other things I was working through. But yeah, kind of interesting to look back. Um,
Yeah, I want to share my juxtaposition to yours because my growing up was different for me, but I can remember I remember the first time that anything came out during self-pleasure. Like I remember it just being like this tiny little glob. And
mhm,
so that points to how young I was, because it was before my
mhm.
body was even producing that amounts to have a wet dream. And I remember, it was interesting because it didn't start with porn for me, but it started with a kid on the bus had like a shopping magazine, like a Sears catalog with women in bras and panties and stuff. And he like taught me to cut these pictures out. And we were like making these little books with all these pictures. And uh,
Yeah.
I got caught with that at my house and, got spanked for that. And like all these things happened. That was one of my first
Wow.
experiences was shame
Yeah.
and then seeing porn really early on. And so it's fascinating how each of us has this unique experiences of how we first learn about pleasure, ejaculation, orgasm, sex, and really how that spirals into our lives and the I'm sure you could tell a tale from the beginning all the way through to now in all the ways that these have rippled into your experiences and your relationships and me too. And it's fascinating. And I love talking about the differences and the commonality that weaves over all of them as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would say one of the things that I appreciate and I take as a gift from that is that haven't started being sexual that early, and having, I'm gonna say, a healthy sexual experience,
Yeah.
with,
Yeah.
I mean, in that time I had multiple girlfriends at the time, but there was one in my high school years. I mean, there was the one that, first French kissed me, amazing. We made out. I got to feel her all over, but we weren't going, in the panties or in the pants yet. Later on, that happened with other girl and or two, and then there was the one that, first time having sex. Amazing. But then there was in my high school years, I had a girlfriend for a few years, and that was definitely a relationship where I felt I mean, I always felt connected to the girls, and um, definitely also a big difference from what I see. I've never had a one night stand. I've never was able to or was drawn to doing that because I've always felt this thing of it's so much better feeling connected, and
Mm.
I always needed that. And I also never was desperate enough, I think. I thought about it. My time on Hawaii, I definitely thought about it. In those years that I was, single, started watching porn and all that. But before then, I never had the need to either, because there was always a woman in my life. But yeah, that relationship in high school, that was really that sweetness you talked about earlier, where, I just remember us standing naked in front of each other and just touching each other lightly, for a while, like having those kind of sensual spaces together,
Yeah.
that there was, arousal, but without having to go hard or all the way. There was just so much, love and sexual arousal, that I really appreciated. And I think back to in a special way, something opened for me or something. It filled a cup that I
Mm.
really treasure,
Mm.
And I would say through the relationships in my life, that has always been something that I've drawn from, to have that be a special connection in a special space together. And that I
Mm,
always needed to feel connected
mm,
in a way, even as a man. So I know that's kind of different from most other men, because most other men are, or there is men, and there's many friends that I've talked to who are like, I need sex, and if it's just sex, that's fine. Like, I
right,
don't need to be in a romantic relationship or anything.
right.
But for me, that's definitely been a common thread going all through my relationships, that I always needed to have that connection, and that I've drawn from those spaces of just entering spaces of being close, having that closeness and that being an important part, not it having to be penetrative all the time.
Yeah.
Um, of course, that's a big part of it too, though.
I'd be fascinated to see research that went around and asked men that had similar experiences to you, like an openness around nudity, not shaming around sexuality, like some of these commonalities to like find some common themes and how many of those men would share a similar experience in that connection is super important, that they don't need a one night stand, like that's not what they're attracted to. And isn't it interesting that you started watching porn and that was really the only time that you started to even consider a one night stand? That's doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem coincidental to me. And I think innately, inherently in all, I would be as bold to say in all human beings, connection would be the ruler of sexuality and intimacy if we didn't have all these crazy things that our brains are filled with around, religion and sin and you're gonna go to hell and lust and all these stories that so many people are filled with porn. I think this is a huge reason why the one night stand culture even exists is because of all this programming. But I believe as humans, we're more innately drawn towards love, connection, depth, presence, all these things.
Yeah, of course. I mean, in a way, the sexual intimate act is, to me at least, the tip of the iceberg, and it should be the celebration of a love together between lovers. I liked what you just brought up about, and I wanted to bring that up about my upbringing, about religion and how that can have an effect on normalizing, sexual everything. And it's I think it's important to note that in East Germany, it was very atheist, so there was not a lot
Whoa.
of religious influence.
Whoa.
Very interesting, right? I mean, I actually
Whoa.
researched a little bit if the nudist culture came out of the communist or socialist movement. Some of the, I mean, these were all ideologies from Marx and Engels, but it didn't come from
Wow.
that. It started earlier, so that was interesting for me to get to know. But yeah, um, there was churches everywhere, of course. This is Europe. There's a church in every village, but in East Germany especially, they actually fell into ruins, a lot of them, because religion just wasn't very big. And the communist socialist regime was actively pushing the church aside and saying, "You're not, you're not powerful here," basically. So very
Wow.
interesting, and how that influenced, potentially the nudist culture, and then again that connection between cultural normalizing of body culture, free body culture, nudist body culture, and how that translates into how comfortable people feel in the bedroom, around their
Oh, yeah.
bodies,
Yeah.
around talking about sex, around accepting each other or their children, or like me when I was a teenager, around relationships and having that be okay, me walking by the breakfast table nude, all of that. Like, so interesting to me, to make those connections, how the cultural norm translates very clearly into the bedroom, for each individual. Um, and I researched a little bit before this just because I'm fascinated by it too, about learning about my culture in this conversation. Apparently, yeah, Germans have some of the highest, like, not satisfaction, but we're okay with our bodies more than other cultures.
Mm,
We're okay talking about our bodies, about the size of our bodies, all of that.
mm,
And even though, porn is actually quite a big thing there too, I think it was like less than 3% of men or women think that it's a problem.
mm,
It's just like an entertainment, you
mm,
know?
mm,
And I'm sure that's all changing with the
mm.
westernizing and the social media and all of that, the influence that all that has, but it still definitely translates, you know?
There's
So,
there's such a, and this is why I love having these conversations because there's such a fascinating weaving of things. And I think one of the most potent things, particularly in the West and many other areas that I hear that there's a lot of people that watch porn, um, that it gets to problematic levels, is a lot of correlation to the wrongness of it. Like when there's a strong, heavy conversation about it being wrong or, dangerous or the religious connection, that makes porn 10x in
yeah.
how much it's gonna hook a guy or a person. Because it's like, oh, I'm doing this thing. It feels so good. It's so bad. And in that creates this interesting quagmire to get sucked up in or stuck in or like exaggerated in this loop of I'm doing this thing. It feels really good. I shouldn't be doing it. All the way to the, because I remember being a young boy and experiencing this, like to the point that we're told you doing this thing will put you in an eternal hell where you're going to burn and hang out with the devil. You're going to be with Satan. Like all these
Yeah,
belief systems correlated to me sitting in front of the screen and touching my body this way that feels so good. There's all these sensations, all this chemistry, this release, this amazing feeling, but now it's all coupled with, woven with, I shouldn't be doing it. It's bad. You know, there's such an interesting mix in there.
totally, totally. Yeah. Um, Makes me think of too. So I've been in the States now longer than I was in Germany. I left there when I was 19. And I would say that the culture here has definitely influenced me now too, to some degree. I mean, I remember, living in Hawaii, wanting to change my beach or changing my board shorts in the parking lot, and some big Hawaiian dude yelling at me, being like, you know, put a towel around you. I don't want my kids to see you naked. And like, I mean, that sticks out for sure. But all the other cultural influences, being around Americans and um, seeing the different cultural influences here, I think what you're talking about, I can definitely relate to at this point too. In that time when I was single and watching porn, and even that you have to go on these forbidden sites and do all that. And I had girlfriends, and I actually the mother of my children. She was like really upset with me watching porn. For her it was like this really bad thing, and it poisoned my mind, and all of that. And yeah, total different influence, total different also imprinting on my psyche as a man. And I'm potentially, I'm kind of mixing the palettes now in my
Yeah,
life, and kind of mixing it up. I
yeah.
do think that I'm still very open in all those ways, but I
Yeah.
also relate to, and maybe in some ways have also adapted some of those influences, cultural influences of America, especially.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. The mixing of the palette. Yeah, you've now been here more of your life, and so you have a strong foundation. And I think that that's brings so much value to this conversation, which is growing up in the way that you did, but now mixing into this different place. And what a strong example of that, of you changing and and like, what are you doing? Like, this is, you can't do this. Like,
Yeah.
that's such a representation of the stark contrast. And, that's one of the elements that I think so fascinating about these conversations is there's so many different upbringings. There's so many different stories like yours that I don't know about. Like, where are other people growing up that are similar to yours? And then what are all the varieties in between your version to the version of, being around religion and culture that's shaming you and telling you it's bad? Like, there's so many varieties, and I think that the have us having these conversations really shines light on what we get to do with all of this.
Yeah.
What
Sure.
do what do I get to represent in this new timeline, in my family, in the people around me, and the people that listen to this podcast from, all these different upbringings, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, I mean that's what I come to as well. And there's a part definitely about respect of the different cultures. And so yeah, on Hawaii, I do put a towel around my waist, when I change my board shorts. It's okay,
Yeah.
and I can do that without thinking that it shames my body,
Yes.
I can do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, especially for us men who are, asking these questions, like how can we be a better father? How can we be the men that we're wanting to be? I think it's important to have those conversations in our relationships, in our families. I know in my family now, it's a big conversation too. My wife and I are quite sexually active, and the conversation around, do we care if the kids hear us? You know,
Yeah, that's a big one.
like, yeah, it's a big one. And we live kind of in a family compound here. We have other, people living on our land, and sometimes we're like, "Yep, they all heard us." They're, and thinking that it's a good thing too. Why not? Why not think that it's something that can inspire and make the others feel good too? And for us, it's an incredible act of, really becoming one with God. It's such a spiritual experience for us. And um, I wanted to speak to that too. I mean, that's kind of my personal journey into spirituality too. But now being with my queen is more like worshiping the goddess. Is really me being in front of my altar and saying, with every kiss, I worship this in front of me. I recognize that you gave birth to me, to all my kids, to all of life, and to acknowledge that and to touch it in that way, to be with her in that way. And what an amazing experience. And interesting too. I don't know. I've heard in some other podcasts. I was listening to a few. I don't know too much about all the work that you've done in the past because you've been at this for a while. But I listened to a few, and um, there's different. There's so many different experiences of the sexual act. But
Yeah.
for me, it's definitely one of reverence and really a deeper coming together, deeper communion. And I have to say, the more I'm in that place of feeling that deeper communion and really the connection with everything else, the more dry my orgasms are, which I find very interesting. And that's probably just, in those tantric practices, it's exactly what they talk about is to try to channel that energy into connection, into opening the heart, into transmuting those sexual energies from the lower chakras into the others. But it's definitely something that's happened for me here and there organically.
Will you tease that apart a little bit for the listeners? And I'll jump in there with you as well, but just what you mean by that, like a dry orgasm.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so everybody knows what a not dry orgasm is, when you actually
Yeah.
come.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, this will be interesting too, just my perspective. So I've actually gotten snipped. I can't make babies anymore.
Yeah.
And that's been about 8, 10 years now. And it's actually been a really good experience for me. But a dry orgasm would be where you're basically feeling all the orgasmic energies in your body, but without coming
Mhm.
in through ejaculation. And in tantric practices, I believe, I'm not an expert, but they say that that is a way where you can keep building the energy. Kind of that's more of the orgasm that of the female
Yeah.
orgasm, where it builds on top of each other, and you can just get higher and higher. Um, and I would definitely agree with that on in my experience too. There is a level of wow, you just reach this other space, like, and then you can keep going.
Mm,
Although for me, also in my current relationship, I have to say, I've been practicing the withholding
mm,
less than I have in other relationships. And it's actually, weirdly enough, it's nurtured the sexual energy between my partner and I more than all the other relationships before. So
yeah.
it's interesting and curious. I'm curious about it. I'm not sure why and how, but we love it, you know? We
Yeah.
feel like we're wanting to be close more often, um, without me trying to withhold or keep my keep my semen or, you know.
Yeah. I love that
Um,
you're bringing in both of these conversations, semen retention or semen intention and non-ejaculatory orgasms. And I think that this is actually a lot of what men want to learn about when they hear about sexuality. It's like the carrot that is
mm,
dangling. It's like, oh yeah, I want that. I want to have
mm,
multiple orgasms. I want to, be able to retain my semen and not, not come just, so quickly. And obviously one of the most famous books, maybe not obviously, is The Multi-Orgasmic Man. And this is something that I see people talk about a lot when it comes to sexuality and working with men. This is one of those things that I think that men on their journey, it's so important to get the foundational work that you are blessed to experience naturally on your journey, of not getting so much of the shame, of not being impacted by porn and masturbation before you got to explore sexuality on your own. And, um, I'm just feels so important for me that men do this emotional, psychological, deep look at themselves in their programming around sexuality, because I think a lot of men come to desiring these things from wounded places,
mm.
from places of feeling not good enough, from places of addiction or needing always needing more, um, from it all being about, well, if I do that, it's going to please the other person
Yeah.
and they're going to love me then. And so I just want to point out to that for the listeners in this discussion around holding in our seed and talking about non-ejaculatory orgasms, because I think this is the pinnacle and this is where it really turns into a spiritual practice, not just a physical. We go physical, we go psychological, we go emotional, we go, and we can go all the way to spiritual with sexuality. And it really is a path that I think, instead of it being a limiting or harmful thing in our life, that sexuality is for so many men, it's a distraction, it's leaking energy. And we're talking about it moving to this place where it's just connecting us to God, to creation, to the spirit realm, this deep union with the other beyond thought and beyond shame and this emotional mess. I think that, I mean, we could talk about this forever.
Yeah, totally, totally. It's such a good thing. Yeah, and just to take that a point further too, when I am able to go to those places with my partner and feel that communion, and in that moment also the energy that's being released through our bodies is so immense. And I want to say that it also increases, throughout the years with my wife now. The energy that flows through us keeps getting bigger. It feels like it keeps expanding. And what happens for me is I actually, again, kind of a natural process. I'm sure there's also some tantric teachings about this, but like I devote that energy to something that's important to me,
Yes.
like to
Yes.
my family, to my community that I live
Yeah.
around, to the world. Like have that energy flow into something good, make a positive difference in the world, and so powerful. Can be so
Yeah.
powerful, and can be so also, I would say a force for good. Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to just touch on briefly is I mentioned earlier that I was sterilized. What's it called again? I'm missing the word.
Yeah. Vasectomy.
Vasectomy, exactly. So I got a vasectomy about 10 years ago, and I just want to tell men, especially, that it can be a really good experience, actually. And I at the time had two beautiful children. I was done. Like that was plenty, and I wanted to be there for them, as much as I could. I wanted to. That was all the blessing I needed. So when I got the vasectomy, I know that there's a small percentage of men that can have complications, but it was fine for me. And what I noticed is, and it kind of correlates to some of the yogic texts that I read about semen retention and all that, is that you're not actually letting go of that energy anymore. Your body
Whoa.
is reabsorbing that
Whoa.
without me even trying, which is
Whoa.
fucking cool.
That's like a cheat
Like,
code.
yeah, it is kind of a cheat code, and I instantly felt my like immune system being boosted.
Whoa.
And I felt like I mean, the women love it too, you know? I mean, they love it when you're able to come inside them without any
Yeah.
repercussions, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I just wanted to speak about that because I think sometimes we look at that like you're losing your balls or you're losing
Yep.
your power. And I
Yep.
just want to say no. There's also another way you can look at it, and there's a lot of pros about that as well. So.
I appreciate you bringing that. That it hasn't been a subject that's come up anywhere, and I think that there could be a whole deep conversation on that, um, in the different ways that that serves men or doesn't serve men. And I believe that we're in a phase right now that a lot of men are considering that, you know, with the way that the world is and the generations that are alive right now that are in that age. I don't have a lot of friends that have had kids, and I have friends that have gotten vasectomies and just are choosing not to have children. And so it's a potent time to have that conversation, in multiple ways. But yeah, just in you saying like, yeah, there is a I've felt that in myself when I've thought about it in the past of like, oh, will I lose? What will I lose? Will I lose my drive? Will I lose my desire? Will I lose that want? Um, so I got something
Yeah,
else to say, but I want to make space for you first.
yeah, definitely not. Definitely not. Quite the opposite, I would say. And I mean, my story was that in my marriage with the mother of my children, I was definitely sexually repressed, and I'm sure a lot of divorced fathers can relate to that. It's not an uncommon story. So when I divorced and the relationships after that, it was definitely about me regaining my sexual confidence, um, getting to know again what it's like to be worshipped,
Mm,
that somebody
mm,
wants you.
mm,
So maybe with that, it was a sexual awakening of some sorts,
mm,
for
mm,
me anyhow. But yeah, my sexual drive has definitely gone up. And I have to say, um, yeah, I was gonna say that I've always treasured or thought that I'm blessed and grateful to have had enough sex in my life, and we're talking about teenage years too, like all
yeah,
of that, to where I could be done today and feel good about it.
yeah,
Like I do not have any more
yeah,
need to
yeah,
experience things,
yeah, yeah,
other than wanting to be in communion, wanting to be close with my wife,
yeah, yeah.
um, but it's only gotten more, I'm gonna say, straight up. Like the last few years, I've actually gotten sex injuries because, we've been so active and we're like, why is our as I joined hurting so much. Like we go and see all these therapists, and then my mom just a couple months ago was like, "You all just shagging too much." And yeah, this is the thing, you know. You can totally get injured having too much sex. So anyhow, I'm just saying, you know, there's good things.
The other thing that you said that was really potent and worthy of so many conversations is how these things, learning these healthy ways of relating with sex, not what you shouldn't do, what not to do, all this thing has been the narrative, but looking at how do I create a healthy relationship to sexuality, one of the key aspects is that it brings more energy in my life to create in other areas. You said to be a force for good.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the most important pieces of the conversation for us as men is that the barometer of a healthy sex life is that it nourishes me, it satisfies me, it fulfills me in a way that energizes me to create in the other areas, whether it's being a father, whether it's being a provider, whether it's creating in my community, whether it's getting stronger and taking better care of myself that it becomes a force for good. It's energizing me to be more than I would be without it. And I think that's one of the key barometers of a healthy relationship to sexuality.
Yeah, I like that thought for sure. I would agree with you. I mean, probably most men relate to the fact that, at least my experience after having an orgasm is like, I start thinking about all the things I want to do, you know, like in bed. Like, I still want to cuddle for a bit, but then I'm like ready to go. Like, I'm ready to create, you know? So that's definitely relate to that. And I think what you say is true. On the other hand side, I also have to say there is for me at least personally, a direct correlation between life force and sexual energy being a similar thing. So that
Mhm.
if I
Yeah,
am involved in a project that is taking a lot of my life force,
yeah,
you know, and for me, that's creating. I'm a builder, I have a farm, you know, all these different things. So
yeah,
if I'm in a project that is taking a lot of my power or a lot of my strength to do, my sexual energy, that it's the same is what I'm saying. So
yeah,
it's using that
yeah,
sexual energy too.
yeah,
And for me to feel or want to be sexual again, I kind of have to slow down a bit with all that creation,
yeah,
creating, and come back
yeah,
to a place, you know. And for my wife and I mean, this is our week right now where we don't have the kids, which is great and we love it. And really, the first day for us is always this huge journey of like slowing down, you know. And just a couple of days ago, I mean, for us, it is surprising us ourselves how we journey into that, you know. First day without kids after work, like we sit down, we have a, you know, I roll us a little something to, you know, have a little toke and we relax, we talk, we, you know, have something to drink, we step in the hot tub and, you know, before that first night, we're like, oh yeah, we got to go out, let's go get some food and all that. But really, all we need is just to relax with each other
yeah.
and to enter the space of, you know, sensuality, enjoying each other and the space of yeah, non-doing with
Mm,
each other, you
mm,
know? And that led to amazing sex, you know, and to amazing feeling of connection afterwards. Amazing walk in the sunset, checking out our garden, you know, and looking at all
mm.
the
Ooh,
plants we care
yeah.
for, you know, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, so that relation between
Yes.
as a man too, when I do create, it does take the same energies that
Hmm.
I also feel is being used in sex.
Yeah. And I think, in that theme is that where there's a potential for us to grow those capacities, to grow that capacity of life force energy moving through us. And so, as you're creating this beautiful, intimate relationship with your wife and you're out creating in the business world, like those can create synergy together in the way that that energy moves through us. And Yeah, and it looks differently. Sometimes it's going to be really on, and sometimes it's going to be dormant and relaxed,
Yeah,
and just like creating a
for sure.
relationship with it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, wow. We've covered so much on this episode, and we could talk a lot more about just little veins in here. Super appreciative of you sharing your story. It actually enlightened me to a lot of things that I've never heard before in a man's experience. And I think there's a lot for people to chew on and learn from in hearing this. I'd love to bring this episode to a close and just pass it to you for any story you want to finish with or anything from your experience. You've had a lot of experience in spaces with non-sexual nudity and men going through their sexual shadows and discovering their gold. Any last message that you want to share with the listeners here?
Well, it's kind of a prayer, I would say, that what I wish to see in the world, and through this alchemy that's happening through me too, what I wish to create in the world is with respect, is a change in the way that we are in our families, Yes, put the towel on in the parking lot, but also maybe there's a way we can, I don't know, have nude co-ed spaces in the saunas we go to, or create, or some of the workshops we're creating, the spaces we're creating together as men and women, to have it be a part of a normalizing of nudity, you know, um, and that translating to our kids, hopefully for them to feel a little more, uh, a little better and a little more normal in the bodies that they inhabit, and for it to be okay for them to feel the things that they are, for them to feel comfortable to talk to us about it. And I'm in that journey too. My kids are in the teens now, and I'm trying to have those conversations with them. And some of them it's really easy. Some of them they're just looking at me like, what do you want me to say? So I'm just in that experiment too. But my wish truly is, maybe for some of that German nudist culture to transmit, and for us to create a little bit of that wherever we go.
Let's bring more of that German nudist culture out into the world.
Yes.
I and this is a little plug, but I am currently doing right now something called the Naked Truth. I'm doing it monthly, where we join together on Zoom and we disrobe and we talk about body shame, and it's all about desexualizing nudity. So for the listeners, if you're interested, reach out if you'd like to step into an opportunity of doing the desexualization of nudity, because yeah, I think that there's a lot of potency to come from that. Brother, thank you so much for coming on today. It was a treat to share this time and space with you, and so rich to share this conversation with many more men. So thank you for your journey in the man that sits before me.
Thank you, Ian. It was great talking with you.
And to all the listeners, yeah, um, many podcast episodes to come. Comment with anything that's there for you and reach out if you have any questions. I appreciate you being on this journey together with me. Cheers.